Okay, let's talk some climate change and fitting the pieces together for climate change. You've probably heard a lot about climate change and global warming. Some scientists say global cooling. There's a lot of different philosophies out there about climate change, but let's kind of try to fit the pieces together today on what exactly is climate change. First of all, the thing we need to talk about is what is climate? Well, climate is the weather on Earth. So the temperature, the amount of precipitation, the amount of sunlight, the differences in storms, and uh, whether there are storms, whether there aren't storms in an area is basically the easiest way to think about it is its weather. The climate is affected by changes in the sun's output. Over time, the sun gets hotter and cooler. It's always hot, but just different levels of hot and cool. So the sun's output changes over time. It's not really noticeable by us as humans, but even small changes in the sun's output or the energy it gives off can affect the Earth's climate. Another one is the Earth's tilt. Many of you may or may not know the Earth is actually slightly tilted, and the portion that points closer to the sun is usually warmer or has more radiation from the sun, which causes summertime and your warmer seasons. And the part that's pointing away causes your fall and winter seasons based on the Earth's tilt. So the climate is affected by that. Volcanic eruptions can also affect climate in a specific area, both hot and cold. Volcanoes obviously let off hot lava, so they can make an area really hot. But they can also make an area really cool when the volcanic ash goes in the air and blocks the sun, therefore cooling down an area as well. So volcanic eruptions can affect climate as well. And drifting continents, once again, you may or may not know, back several million years ago, the Earth's continents were all connected in one big continent scientists call Pangaea, and they've slowly drifted apart over time. That's called plate tectonics. But those drifting continents, as they drift into different areas of the Earth, their climate changes over time. And finally, the thing that we're going to focus on today is how greenhouse gases affect climate and how scientists believe they've been increasing over the last 30 years or so and how that's having a negative effect on climate. So, what are greenhouse gases? Well, there are five major greenhouse gases: nitrous oxide, methane, sulfur, hexafluoride, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. So those five, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur, hexafluoride, and water vapor, are your five major greenhouse gases that scientists believe are affecting the climate. So how do they affect the climate? Well, they affect the climate with something called the greenhouse effect. And basically this is very similar to what happens in your car in the summertime when the windows are rolled down and maybe you go into the store, go inside your house for a little while, and you come back out and you notice your car is really, really hot. Well, that's caused by the greenhouse effect. Same thing happens on Earth. The sun's incoming solar radiation will enter the Earth's atmosphere, and some of it will be absorbed by the surface of the Earth, and some of it will be reflected back out into space. But there's part of it that's trapped by the Earth's atmosphere, and this is called the greenhouse effect. You can see the little dots in the middle, the little green, red, and gray, blue looking dots. Those are just to simulate greenhouse gases. And as the sun's energy comes in, it bounces off the Earth's surface, and then it will try to escape the atmosphere. But greenhouse gases help to trap it in. And this is a good thing for the Earth when the greenhouse gases are in moderate amounts because it allows us to be warm, basically, and for life to exist on Earth. Without greenhouse gases, we'd all die because the Earth would be extremely cold. However, there are too many greenhouse gases. It can cause too much heat to be trapped in and for the climate to be very, very hot. And that's what scientists believe is happening on Earth right now. One of the ways they know this is snow and ice are declining. This is the same area. This is the Grinnell Glacier in Glacier National Park. On the left side, that's a photo from 1900. On the right side, that's a photo from 2012. And as you can see, the amount of snow on the right compared to the left is significantly less. You can also tell that the riverbeds or the streams flowing from that glacier are also a lot smaller as well. So one of the reasons scientists believe that the Earth is warming up is, frankly, snow and ice, not only in glaciers, but in the Arctic regions of the Earth are going down. They're getting smaller and smaller. As you can see from this graph, the gray line is basically 1979. You can see it was much higher. This is the amount of snow and ice. And the last time on this graph it was taken was 2007, 2008. You can see the amount of snow and ice is significantly less than it was right around 30 years ago. So scientists believe, and they do have proof, that the Arctic sea ice and the Arctic North and the South Pole and the glaciers are declining because the snow and ice are melting in those areas. So how do we know for sure, besides snow and ice? Well, one of the three things we look at is tree rings. You can tell by the rings of a tree because each ring in a tree represents a year in the tree's life. And you can tell by the width of the tree rings and also from sometimes the color of the tree rings what the climate was like during that time. Another way you can tell is fossils or organisms that have died and are caught in rocks. We can study those, scientists study those to see basically into the past and what the climates were like during the times when those organisms lived. And the most effective way that we've found over the past 20 or 30 years is we will take ice cores. Basically, you're just taking a big sample of either a glacier or maybe ice from the north or south pole or the Arctic sea ice. You're taking a big core of it out using kind of just like a screw. Basically, it goes down into the ice core and then pulls out a sample of that ice, and we can study the ice and how it's changed over time. Because there's many years of ice trapped in an ice core, so we can kind of cut it up and take samples and study. And many scientists believe that the Earth is warming up currently. Another way we study climate change is more recent or real-time data collection. And to do this, we do two ways. The first one is land-based weather stations. You've probably seen these around. You may even have one or know a relative that has one. This way is they take just accurate readings real time here on land. So they're trying to collect data at many different locations and kind of average that data together to get a good idea of what the climate's like on land in that area. The other way they do it is they'll use satellites. So the satellites are hovering above the Earth's atmosphere looking down on the Earth, and they'll use photography or other instruments to determine data for temperature, or maybe greenhouse gases or storms, or in some cases glacier and snow amounts in particular areas to determine if the climate is getting warmer or cooler. So we'll use both land-based weather stations to get something on the ground in real time, or we'll use satellites that are above the ground to get a better idea of what the atmosphere looks from high above. So why should we care? Why is this a big deal? Well, as you can see from this graph, scientists believe over the next 100 years or so that if we continue on this rate, the Earth is going to warm up. As you can see, there's a lot more red on the prediction for 2090 than there is in 1990, which is about 20 years or so from where we're at right now. So we're well on our way to 2090. Probably not during our lifetimes, but maybe something we should be concerned about with our children and grandchildren, that potentially the Earth could heat up. So the Earth could be becoming significantly hotter over the next 100 years, and scientists are very aware of this, and they're very concerned right now. So here's the biggest question. What happens to the ice sheets? So the North and the South Pole, what happens to the glaciers if they melt? And if they melt, there'll be more of this. There'll be more ocean. And that's not a good thing, because if the Arctic Ocean ice melts faster than what it's predicted, so there is some melting of the ice right now, scientists know that, but if it melts faster, sea levels will rise. In other words, there'll be flooding. And with the ocean, since it's so big, if the sea level rises just a few inches to a few feet, people are in trouble. It's estimated that if the ocean rises just 2 feet, the United States would lose 10,000 square miles of land. So that's a pretty significant amount. If it rises 3 feet, coastal cities like Miami of Florida, New York, San Diego, and other coastal cities will be completely gone. Now this is not good because obviously the city's gone, but as the city begins to flood, the people are going to have to move somewhere else, so they'll move more towards the center of the continent, and frankly more towards the middle of the United States, which is where we live. And not only are the cities gone that they originally lived in, but now the areas which they move into have become very crowded, so you could have population issues as well as the coasts of the United States flood. So worldwide, the issue is half the world's population lives on the coast. So many people they use the ocean's resources for food and other things, so they live on the coast It's just their lifestyle. So if the ocean continues to rise, not only here in the United States, but worldwide, there'll be less land. People have to move more inland, and things could be pretty crowded here in just a few short years. So what do we know? The warming of the climate is happening. There's proof of this. Scientists have been noticing over the last 30 years or so that the climate is warming up. And there's a very high confidence that that global warming is caused by us, by humans, mainly the burning of fossil fuels. And over the last 30 years, it's believed that when we burn those fossil fuels and do some other things that hurt the environment, there's a negative influence not only on ourselves and where we live, but other ecosystems as well. So other organisms are affected by the human caused global warming. So what's next? What can countries do? So as a big group, what can we do? First of all, reduce vehicle use. So just simply put, ride in a car less. Um, you could ride a bike, walk, you could carpool, but just ride in your car less. The other thing we could do is still ride in cars, but make them more fuel efficient. In other words, make them to where they don't use as much fuel as they currently do. I think we're getting better and better at this worldwide, but we still have some uh, vehicles that aren't very efficient with their fuel. They use a lot of fuel to get to shorter distances, and that's not good for the climate. It could also improve energy efficiency in buildings. So in other words, when we're heating and cooling a building, make it to where the buildings are just more energy efficient. So they don't let that heating and cooling escape. They also don't let the climate or the sun's energy from the outside enter the building. So just allows us to use electricity more efficient, to heat and cool a building. It also increase the use of alternative fuels. We studied this a few months ago, but increasing the use of alternative fuels would help a lot. To get away from fossil fuels would be great. Use things such as maybe wind power, solar power, power of the ocean, or geothermal power to provide our electricity instead of fossil fuels. Also decrease deforestation. We've talked about this a lot, but whenever you cut down trees, not only do you take away the organisms that live in those trees, but you also take away an opportunity for trees to produce oxygen for us to breathe and for cover to shade areas, and also just in general, trees have so much moisture in them that they cool an area down, and if you cut a tree down, the area instead of being cooled is now heated up. Another way you could fight deforestation, which is unfortunately a large problem in this world today, you just simply plant more trees. So more trees, the better. So what can you do? There's several things you can do. Sometimes a lot of this seems too big for you, but that's not true. You can make a difference in your community. You can make a difference in Kansas City. You can make a difference in the world if you'll just do one or two things, such as use mass transit, such as a city bus or bike or walk instead of using cars. If you do have a car, tune up your car. Make sure the engine's running at its peak performance so that it can get the best gas efficiency possible. I'm bad about this. I need to get better, but unplug or turn off appliances. Basically, if you're not using something, unplug it because it still drains electricity as it's plugged in. I did this recently by water-saving faucets, toilets, and shower heads. There's some really, really good designs out there that will help you to save water in your house, which is not only good for your water bill, but also good for cutting back on greenhouse gases and the burning of fossil fuels, because whenever we have to purify that water for use, whether it be in your shower, your toilet, or to drink, it takes fossil fuels to do that. One thing I need to do in my house, I know, is insulate or replace old windows. My windows leak the air outside in and the air inside out quite frequently. I need to change these out. That would go a big way towards me saving a little money on my electrical bills, but also help the environment as well. And a simple thing you could do when you buy products is look for the United States EPA Energy Star label. That's the Environmental Protection Agency label. It looks like this. If you see this Energy Star label, it means it's a good product. It's passed certain requirements that allow it to be very energy efficient and be a good product for you to use that will not only help you to save money, but help out the environment as well. So, what will the final pieces of the puzzle be with global warming? A lot of scientists do not know for sure. Still a lot of questions out there. But how will you add or take away to this puzzle? And what will the puzzle look like when it's finally done in terms of global warming and climate change in our world?